Going to talk about gender dysphoria. This is something that some people understand, some people go through it, some don't understand it at all. And it's really like depression, or to me, like bipolar personality disorders. Unless you go through it, you won't understand it. And it's not like something you want. I mean, if anybody tells me they want gender dysphoria, if somebody said that to me, I would ask why. Because it's debilitating. It's not easy to deal with. It's not something you can wish away. Like if somebody tells you, shut off depression, just shut off your personality issues, just turn it off like a light switch. It just doesn't work like that. You can't just shut these things off, but you'll have people try to tell you that. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody ever. I wouldn't wish gender dysphoria on anyone, because it makes you feel an incongruency with your body, and it makes you feel it can escalate, and it can get strong, it can get severe in cases to where you, like in my case, wanting to be feminine, wanting to feminize, you look at yourself and you feel out of body, kind of. It's kind of hard to explain in a way. You look at yourself in the mirror, and you don't feel right with who you are any longer. And you'll look at old pictures of yourself, or, like me, I'll look at old pictures and stuff and say, who the hell was that guy? Who is that guy? Who is that guy with the facial hair? Who's that guy with the short, spiky hair? And you find that even if you try to go back into that to say please others, or just to try to fit in with what you used to do, I'm not going to say you can't do it. I'm sure there's people that do it because they have situations maybe where they're going to lose their job, or they have families, or they have spouses, or whatever, so they force themselves to keep it secret and do it. But if they genuinely have gender dysphoria, they're going to be miserable. So with me, there's different cases of this. You have people that you hear about in childhood that from an early age, they have this so strong that they know as a little kid, they just know as a little kid they should be the other gender. And they feel that strong throughout their childhood, throughout their teen years. But then you have others that have minor cases of it, or have little tiny pieces of their childhood and pieces of their teen years, and that there can be that incongruency, and you can feel that gender dysphoria, but it's very mild and you can't really put your finger on it. That would be me. Like when I didn't start really, I had a couple of things that happened to me. Like when I was 11 in puberty, I felt feminine, very feminine, could not understand it, could not, you're talking about, I was born in 1975. So, when I was 11 years old, 1986, these things were not known about. This type of stuff really wasn't known about hardly at all. So how would you even begin to try to talk about such a thing? And I really couldn't understand it as a child, but I felt very feminine during puberty at times. And it was something that kind of passed. And then when I was around 13, I went through it again in a bit of a stronger way, to where I wanted to put on women's clothes. I had thoughts of pantyhose, high heels, women's stuff, wanting to emulate women that I saw, things like that. But it wasn't, these instances were not so overpowering, but they were there. And what happened with that wanting to dress like a girl or a woman when I was 13 is something that just kind of, well, I would chastise myself. I'd get onto myself. I would tell myself it was evil, things like that. I would figure that if I was to mention that to my mom and stepdad, that I did not even want to think about what could have happened. I don't know for sure. I just feel like that would not have went over too well, and there's just no way I was going to talk about it. I just knew there was no way, and I had a lot of issues as a child anyway. I'd been bullied, and I was not always in stable environments growing up. There were moments of stability in my childhood. And people will ask, well, what causes? Is there a definitive thing that causes gender dysphoria? And I would say we don't know really. I don't think. There's not been enough studies on it as of yet, I would say, to say there's a definitive thing that causes it. I'm not really sure if there is for depression necessarily either, or a definitive thing that causes bipolar or personality disorders per se. We know some things that can point to those things and lead to those things. And gender dysphoria, I feel like if you are dealing with that, you probably are at times dealing with depression too. Like me, I deal with depression. I've been diagnosed bipolar before. I have not been diagnosed borderline, but I exhibit a lot of traits of a borderline, which, if you know anything about borderlines, that incorporates narcissism as well. But in any case, you're usually going to have other things that go along with the gender dysphoria, because there's a lot of discomfort in the gender dysphoria. But what happens with some people, if you don't feel it really strong as a child, like super strong all the time, and as a teenager like me, I just had it in spurts, then you throughout your adulthood it can manifest here and there. And that would happen with me, but it was in little tiny things, like maybe I thought a man was attractive, but I would, maybe I would have certain thoughts that I was not used to having, and I would get onto myself and say, no, that's wrong. Same thing, it's evil, because I was brought up with Christianity and things like that, of thinking these things were wrong. I was often told that these things were wrong and these things were not normal. I was told that at times. You would hear these things. So then you tell yourself, well, you don't want to be an outcast. You don't want to be cast aside. You don't want to be bullied even more than I was already bullied in childhood and bullied through my teen years anyway. So that would have been a lot of my thinking when I was 11 and 13, having these thoughts. I didn't want to be bullied anymore than I already had issues with that. But in adulthood too, there have been times where these little thoughts would creep in that would not have been of, say, per se, a straight person, if you want to say. They were different thoughts, and I would just try to cast them aside and bury them. Or I would have feminine thoughts and try to tell myself they're not my thoughts. So what often happens is adults can get older and have these things happen, and then it can escalate when they get older. Instead of it being so strong when they were young, as a child, just super strong, things can happen throughout their life, I think, to trigger it to come up to the surface in a very strong way when they're older. I think trauma can play into it to bring it up to the surface in a strong way. And I've had a lot of different traumas in my life. And I think one too many of those, it can just, this is an opinion, but in my case, I think I had so many different things happen to me and had different traumas happen to a point where it just, gender dysphoria just came up to the surface, and it just came up in a very strong way. And this started to come up like in a strong way in 2021. around the summer of 2021, it started to bubble up in a way that was getting stronger and stronger. And that was after, this had been a year and a half after a bad breakup that I talk about in some other videos that was very traumatic for me. It caused me to, that situation, it happened at the end of 2019. When that breakup happened, it was so traumatic for me. It ended up causing me to go through a lot of breakdowns and personality collapses. And I'm kind of rehashing this a little bit because some of you may have never seen me before or watched any of my videos, but I do talk about this previously, and it caused a lot of issues in my life to where my personality just, throughout my life, I've been living fake personalities, fake facades mostly. Excuse me. Get a little bit of coffee, maybe that'll help. So, a lot of times, or throughout a lot of my life, there's only little pieces of me that were true. And a lot of me would be a manufactured facade so I could attract women, so I could get into a popular friend group or whatever. And those situations over the years have shattered at different times on me. And I think sometimes when you have something shatter on you one too many times, you just have a total collapse, and it can be dangerous, really, because it can cause you just lose your sense of identity altogether because you really never had one, and you just want to self-delete. You don't want to be here because you get to a point where you've built up yourself so many times throughout your life or situations, and you might, there's been times in my life I've had what seemed like stability for periods of time, but really it was just kind of a manufactured fake facade that I was able to keep going for a while. And if something shatters that, totally shatters it, and that happens over and over again, and that's what would happen to me. It just kept happening. And this breakup was just one too many times of that for me. It was like the tip of the iceberg. It was like pushing me off of a ledge, and it made me become self-aware of my behaviors and to have to turn inward and examine all of that. But it also caused what I believe the trauma, the multiple traumas of it I have experienced, pushed that gender dysphoria that had always been below the surface, pushed it up. And this is something I talk about in therapy. So in case you wonder, if you have been watching me, I've been in therapy since last July. And yes, gender dysphoria was one of the main reasons I went for my depression, for wanting to not be here anymore, for the darkness I was going through. My life was going downhill really bad last July to where I was losing my grip altogether. And I knew I had to do something. And I reached out and found help. But gender dysphoria falls into all of it. And luckily, I ended up with a great therapist that deals with this sort of thing. Well, deals with depression too and all of that, but also deals with other people that are gender dysphoric or trans. And basically, I knew in 2021 something wasn't right because I wouldn't say, is it not right? There's nothing wrong with being gender dysphoric, but you have to try to work through it. But I started feeling more and more feminine. And it started with little things, just the way I would posture and the way I would do things, like just little things that would be more feminine, basically. The way I might sit, or the way I might, just little things, but then it would graduate into wanting to feminize and wanting to shave and wanting to shave my legs and wanting to do other things, wanting to wanting to experiment a little bit with feminine stuff because I was feeling that way. I was feeling that way more and more. And it would alleviate that dysphoria to experiment with these things and just let myself feel it and let myself be. But at the same time, it causes discomfort because of society. It's not easy to just say, okay, I'm going to suddenly make some kind of drastic change. You don't want to tell anybody. And that's how it was for me at first. It takes so much to want to reveal it to anybody that you're going through these things, especially when you've been living a life where you've had personality collapses, you've never had a real core identity, you might be borderline, you've been bipolar, you've had lifelong off and on depression, sometimes it's been severe, and now you've got this dysphoria. And also I would say I've had body issues. Maybe you call it body dysmorphia. It could be that, but I've had these body issues too with weight over the years, image, things like that, and that could easily play in as well with gender dysphoria and mix with that. So when you're dealing with all of that, it can become crippling, and you don't want to go outside, you don't want to do anything, you want to isolate because you're going through all of this. The only real fortunate thing for me is I've never been married. I live alone and not in a relationship or any of that. So there's no one that I'm directly affecting in a home or something like that. And that's what I feel bad for other people that have that situation, because then they're affecting maybe their kids and a spouse, or that can be a lot more complicated. But it's complicated enough, I will say, living alone, because you start thinking about things. Well, there's no way, you start having these thoughts, there's no way I could be trans, that can't be me, can it? There's no way that I want to be a woman, is there? There's no way that what I've seen others maybe go through, that's not me, is it? You start questioning all these things, but you find yourself still going through these rituals like I have to feminize, or to want to do feminine things, and it's just been little steps at a time, really. So what happens, it goes from me shaving and me doing little things here, my posturing and different things. Things are starting to feel more feminine all the way around, to realizing, honestly, how much I've been hypermasculine most of my life, that I've put on kind of a show of hypermasculinity that I've covered up, really have all along been covering up what is more my natural state, which is more feminine. And I've been covering that up most of my life, not even kind of fully understanding that. Like, from simple things too, like the music I like. A lot of the music I like that would be considered girly, feminine, or a lot of movies or romance or things like that, those types of things, a lot of men, even if they do feel feminine and don't want that revealed, you often see that they'll hide all that and act like they don't like it, even if they do like it. Well, that was me for years, because you don't want to be bullied, you don't want to be people coming down on you, people saying stuff. But I've just finally come later in life, you end up learning a lot, you learn quite a few things, and realize that bullies, and I've been a bully, I've been that guy too, because of hurt and pain. Bullies, trolls, whatever you want to call them, have hurt, pain inside. They hide things. That's why they bully and troll other people. And usually, whatever the bullying bullying and trolling about is usually what they're hiding themselves. If they're bullying trans people or bullying gay people, usually it's because they have hidden things in them that are that way. Or they're bullying about other things. It's because there's an aspect of themselves, of that person they're bullying, but they have that going on with them. So there's insecurities with people like that. Total insecurity, and I've done it too, like I said, out of hurt and pain and not having a core identity. I've went down that road before. It's not a good road to go down because you're just projecting your insecurities. And if you are doing it, like in my instance, sometimes I do it to make people laugh at someone else's expense. Oh, okay, you make some, okay, so what? You make some girl laugh and you get her attention. Well, she's toxic. 90-something% she's toxic if that's how she is. And there's going to be problems, right? Because she has insecurities. She bullies people, okay? I mean, that's how that goes. So you're just attracting, or friends, you're trying to get into a friend group that does this sort of stuff. They're all toxic. I've had friend groups like that. They're no longer in my life, and that happens because the toxicity can't sustain itself. Friend groups like that eventually splinter or break up. Relationships like that, they splinter and they break up. So I kept going through this in 2021 and up through 2022, and I couldn't hold a job, and and I have talked about in other videos now. There's different reasons also for not holding a job, because I've also had so much trauma in workplaces with shit managers and people backstabbing and everything else. But it is also because of all the issues with myself, with depression and gender dysphoria, and my mind not being able to hold a fake facade of masculinity anymore. So you trying to go out into work into a place and you have no sense of yourself anymore is also very difficult. And then you're going through gender dysphoria, and if you go into a workplace where they're talking bad about people like that happened to me too. How are you gonna stay there and put up with that? And that happened to me too. I was at a job. The job actually before I ended up in the adult store I'm at now, where the manager's talking about his kid like he was a dog. He's talking about his kid, making fun of him, said his kid's gay because he laughs like a girl and he gets beat up and he deserves it because of that. And here I am, gender dysphoric, sitting over to the side having to listen to all that crap. And I hadn't yet revealed myself to anybody. So anyway, what happened is things just kept escalating, and what I finally did was I knew I needed to talk to people who have been through this. That was my first thing. Let me see if there's a hotline. And there is. There's one I found was Trans Lifeline. And that did help. I talked to a couple of different people there, and I have from time to time, because you talk to people, anyone that's been through gender dysphoria to being male or female trans, they understand. You're talking to somebody who understands what it's like to go through that. So I did that a few times, and then I had a lady friend I used to work with, and we haven't talked in a while, but she was the first person I actually revealed to that I was going through all of this. She's an older friend, and it felt good to tell somebody I knew. She was shocked a bit because she knew me as this hyper masculine guy that was always sarcastic and telling dark jokes all the time, things like that. And I'm not saying humor's not good, but when that's all you're about, and you're just belittling other people, which I did a lot, it can get toxic. And that was me a lot of the time, to cover up so many other aspects of myself. So I don't think she ever fully got it. It probably did make her somewhat uncomfortable, but that's who I first told. I was going to tell a buddy of mine that I've been friends with like over, gosh, I've probably been friends with him 25 years maybe. And he lives in California. And I was going to tell him because, we've been best friends, but issues kept arising between us because he would talk down my depression and talk down mental illness in general, which a lot of people do. They stigmatize it. Men do this a lot, in my opinion. I'm not saying women don't do it, but a lot of the abuse I have sustained and bullying mostly has come from men, but I have taken bullying from women. I'd say an ex or two has done that to me. But mostly men have done it. And a lot of it can be that sort of toxic masculinity of just shut it off, men don't cry, suck it up, all this bull crap. But yet men have very high percentages of self-deleting. And a lot of times it's because of the pressures they're under and expected not to show emotion, which is just ridiculous. But society in a lot of ways is still like that, where you have a lot of the stigmatizing with just this stuff don't exist or just shut it off or whatever crap. And if it was that easy, you wouldn't have all the celebrities that have taken their self out of the world. You wouldn't have all those situations. You wouldn't have people that are rich, poor, or whatever doing it for whatever various reasons. You wouldn't have so many people addicted to drugs, because they're trying to escape their pain. You wouldn't have all that if that was the case. But me and him kept having this battle, and he wanted to just give me quotes of self-help gurus and crap, and it was kind of talking down to me. And then when I mentioned to him about working in an adult store, he said to me, don't be gay or trans. And I knew then, okay, I can't reveal anything to him, right? So that was hurtful. But when you go through this sort of thing, just know you're going to lose people. And you probably will lose people that have been around for a long time, even, because you can't really keep them around. You can only keep them around if you're willing to be fake, or you're willing to hide yourself for the rest of your life. And some people choose to do that, and some people can do it. I mean, if you have mild dysphoria, gender dysphoria, there's a good chance you could do that. You might could do it if it's severe or strong, but you're going to suffer a lot, and you're probably still going to find yourself doing feminization. If you're a man that's wanting to be a woman, you're going to still want to feminize in private or something, and you might get away with that the rest of your life, but it's just hard. And I'm not, let me go back to the friends real quick. You're just going to lose a lot of people, probably. You're going to lose some people, but the thing is, you just have to remind yourself, if you're being genuine, you're being authentic to yourself, there's going to be new people eventually. There'll be the ones that need to be there that understand this stuff. And what happened was, after I revealed to my lady friend that I really hardly talked to, and then I had to let the one long-term friend go because of this, I decided on therapy. And I told my mom, at first with my mom, I just there's other things going on with me you don't know besides just the depression. And eventually she figured it out, and she knows, and she's been good with it. I don't think, no, she doesn't fully understand it. I don't think she's been, I still don't know if she really believes it herself, that people really go through this or wants to believe that, but she supports me. My dad, he may know, if he does, he hasn't said, but he probably suspects if he doesn't know. And what I can say about this sort of thing, it's hard to tell anybody, and it's hard to tell family, because you don't know if they're just gonna walk off from you. And this happens to people too, but what are they supposed to do? Be inauthentic, just fake their life? Are they supposed to just live being miserable? Because that's kind of what's going to happen. And they can do that to appease their family, appease friends, appease whoever. But I know throughout my life, I tried to do that on so many levels. There were times I tried to appease my parents. There were times I tried to appease this guy I told you in California. There's times I tried to appease other friends. There's times it was literally like this. I would change my personality sometimes for one friend to the other, because I knew what they liked and I knew what the other person liked, and I would just adapt. It's not healthy to do that. And that was part of my own personality issues as well, to be a chameleon and shift from one person to the next, to just get along with everybody and to get favor with whoever you want to get favor with. But it catches up to you. It's not healthy, and you never have a sense of who your real self is. And you're always worried about revealing something that you think somebody's going to try to bully you over or troll you over, which is ridiculous. Which again points to their problem, and their problems are insecurities. So now what I would say as far as having gender dysphoria, does it mean you're just trans? No. I mean, does it mean you have to be? No. It doesn't mean, does it mean you should immediately make a decision to do such a thing? I mean, you can, but I would advise against it. My own thought is therapy is a very good tool. I'm glad I went. There was part of me that was just going to make some kind of drastic decision, because my life was becoming so miserable. I did make a social media account for a little while last year, for about 5 months, where I made an account where I was a woman. I tried that to see if that would alleviate it. I just would cosplay, basically, not a drag queen, but I would just, because that's not what this is about. That's the other thing. That's a whole different thing. That's generally gay men who, well, I don't know if they're always gay, but they want to dress up like a woman, but then they're okay with being a man usually when they're done. I'm not going to say that's always the case, but oftentimes that's the case. They're performers. But when you have gender dysphoria, you want to be the other gender. And if it gets severe, you want to keep alleviating it by doing what's going to help you feel that way. And that's what I go through now. And you fight with it to where you think about, okay, you have to really you need to put serious thought into it. This is what I'm going to say to people. If anyone watches this that has gender dysphoria, I would go to therapy if you're not already, just because I think it's good to hash it out with somebody and talk it over with somebody for a while, because you get to the root of some things. You can root out if it's just a sexual thing. You can root out if it's a fetish. You could root out if it's some temporary phase. See, that's the thing too. You got to look at how long it's been going on. Like for me, there's been little pieces throughout life, but as far as it being strong, it's been going on since 2021. So you're looking at something for me now that's escalated continuously since the summer of 2021. It's getting close to 4 years now that it's just kept climbing on me, and it's not backed off. It's gotten stronger, and that's what led me to, you see me now wanting to wear makeup and things like that. And it's taken a long time for me to get to this point. Like, there's no way I was going to get on YouTube and talk about this before, but I've just gotten to the point now. I've been in therapy for a while, and I talk to my therapist about this stuff too. She knows I have a YouTube channel. She knows I'm always working on authenticity. That's just what she challenges me on things, and I'm able to tell her things and her be able to affirm things that are going well. I think it's important to be able to tell somebody what you're going through like that, and then be able to listen and work with you through things. And through me having therapy myself, I've been able to realize that I have an inner core that aligns more with a female. And I'm still not saying that trans is the right thing, but it is something I'm considering, because it's a constant battle for me. And being that I've been going through it for so long, and it keeps escalating, and it keeps the masculinity in me is less and less. It's just become less and less, and I'm more that inner core, that inner female core, and I just align with women. My thoughts and things align more and more with women when I'm natural, when I'm myself. I'm not trying to put on a hyper masculine facade. This is what led me to go and work at the adult store. It wasn't just that. I've told you in previous videos, also because I was looking for an inclusive workplace, which this is. I was looking for a place that was going to be less traffic of customers, which it is. The nature of an adult store is just like that. You don't have tons of customers at a time, and you get different types of people. And are they all great people? No, you're not going to meet just fantastic people in any job. I mean, all the time, but it's much better. I'm able to be myself, and I'm able to be more of who I am there. The people I work with, nobody there is just, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being straight. So don't even take this wrong. I'm just saying nobody I work with there is straight. They're bi or gay or trans. So I'm just more comfortable. Not that I can't be comfortable around anyone straight, but I'm just saying this works well for me because I know I'm accepted. And I know that if the more I decide to go forward with things, at least I know the job I'm at, they're not going to try to bully me, troll me, and everything else, because this happens to people. So it was always it's been in my mind for a long time. And to get back out into society, I needed to be in some kind of place that I can function in. And if I do want to move forward more with this, I will have the ability to do that. And I have the ability to do that where I go to see my therapist if I want to. It's just a matter of me making the decisions and going that route. But I also would say to you, whether you want to be male to female or female to male, it's a very serious thing, and I just wouldn't take it lightly, because your whole life, no matter what age you are, your whole life is just going to shift in such a drastic way. And not either gender, I would say it's a last resort. really. And that's why I haven't just jumped on doing it. It's a last resort. And I know this video is running long, but it's just a lot to talk about. If you're still here, thanks for being here. But it's just such a big decision, and people have different opinions on this, but I just feel like this sort of life-changing decision, when you just jump into it, you just immediately do it without any kind of trying to hash it out or have some therapy just to talk it out, just to make sure your mind is, you can work things out in your mind and know that you're on the right track. Because if you decide to transition, and I mean, this is even, say, without hormones or anything. I mean, still, say you decide you want to be, though, you want to change your name, you want to change your gender marker maybe, or you want to, you got to get new clothes, or you got to get new things. You got to learn new things you never learned before. Especially if you're older like me, your whole life will change. And that's why I say it should be a last resort, because if you're doing it for an aesthetic purpose, that's going to fail miserably eventually. If you're doing it just for, say, an aesthetic, or you're doing it just for, kind of lost my train of thought. If you're not doing it just because of the gender dysphoria and how severe that is, I feel like it could go terribly wrong, because if you go through the trouble of coming out and you tell people, this is what I'm now doing, and I want to be referred to as this person, this name, this gender, and you're you're doing new things, putting on the new clothes of that gender and acting in that way, and then suddenly you realize it was just a phase, or it was just something that wasn't really dysphoric or anything, and then you go back, it's just going to cause you a whole world of pain and trouble, when everybody's going to be like, what the F, what are you doing, when you came out to everybody. And if you get on hormones and do that, it's even worse, because, I mean, at least if you don't get on the hormones and do it, you haven't altered your body permanently. But if you're on hormones long enough, I mean, I wouldn't say you probably get away with it for maybe a few weeks or a month or whatever. But if you're on the hormones for a while, things are going to change, and you're not going to be able to change all those things back. I mean, for a male to female, you're probably going to grow small breasts, your weight's going to shift, and there's going to be some things that happen. Your feelings may change, and there's some things that are going to happen there. And if you go female to male too, the testosterone, and from what I understand, in some instances I hear it's worse really for female to male, because the testosterone can just wreak havoc on a biological female body. There's been instances where testosterone just wrecked the female body when it's not done carefully, And if they take that stuff long enough and try to go back, I mean, there's going to be irreversible things. There could be complications. And it could be the same for male to female. There's going to be things you're not going to be able to shift back. So I take all of that into consideration, and hence go into therapy and all of that, and to talk about it all. But while I'm doing all of that, I'm experimenting. I'm learning makeup, and I got cheap makeup because I can't afford much. And I was in somewhat a debt before I got this job because of my depression and everything. I was going down into a hole, though luckily I don't have a lot of bills, so I own my car and I have cheap rent where I live. I'm very fortunate. I've lived in the same place for years. I have a good landlord that's understanding with me. I don't usually get myself into much debt. I got myself into a little bit of credit debt because I had to survive. So now I'm having to pay off some of that credit debt, and that's a little bit of a chore. And but I'm also thankful, because if I didn't have that, I would, I didn't have really much to survive. And my parents have helped me to some level as well. And I've been fortunate for that. And so I'm still kind of climbing out of a hole, but I'm buying little cheap makeup so I can experiment, I can learn. Because when I did the female Instagram I did a while back last year, I did this little experiment for 5 months. I was using a makeup app on it. I wasn't doing real makeup, and I was altering, I was doing filters and all that stuff, because I just wanted to, it's kind of a fantasy page is what it was, to see how I felt. And also was sexualizing myself, and I got to where I was like, why am I doing that? And I'm, maybe just to experience it, I guess. But I got off of there. And when I got off of there, I wanted to see if that's what my whole thing was. Maybe I had a fetish. But then I realized the dysphoria was still there. And over time, what I've realized by not sexualizing myself, and what I've realized by going to therapy and talking about it and continuing on since then, and also trying to go back to the masculine way. I've even tried to grow my facial hair back out. I had cut my hair at one point, but now it's grown about a year and maybe 10 months, and I couldn't imagine cutting it again. I got really instantly upset last time I cut it. That told me something. I got really depressed. When I'd grow my facial hair, I'd get dysphoric, really dysphoric. And now it's like that all the time. I get dysphoric if it shadows, and it still shadows, so now I'm getting closer to wanting to laser it. But I got to afford that, these things. That's the other thing about this whole thing. If you're going to transition, you got to think about what that's going to be like too. If you want to do hormones, can you get them? Do you want to do them the rest of your life? That's the other factor. Because I don't take any medicines. At almost 50, I'm healthy. I don't take medicines unless I absolutely have to. But hormones, the thing with gender dysphoria is you want more attributes of the other gender. And I go through that I want more. I have some things working for me. I'm short, I'm small. I have a little body hair, things like that, but I still find myself wanting more, and you go through that with gender dysphoria. You end up, you want to alleviate it completely, and you want more, and you want to blend in. And that's my experience, is you want to blend in with other women, and you think about it. And that keeps coming to me. And this is something I'm just doing mostly on YouTube right now too. It's not like I'm not going out full face makeup. On here, I'm letting you guys see me go on a journey. It's like, it's kind of what I got on here, to not knowing exactly what I was going to do. It was like, okay, I knew I was going to talk about what's happened to me, authenticity, things like that, what brought me to this point. But also let you see me go through these things, like, a couple of videos back wearing atrocious makeup. Now I'm not saying it's great now, but you're seeing me learn, as my therapist says, like a second puberty. You're trying to experimentation, and seeing how it is to do. And like I said, buying real cheap stuff right now too, stuff I can just play with. And you see me wear the same shirts, and the reason is because I don't have really the money at this point to buy clothes. Hopefully in the future I will, but I have masculine clothes, but I don't have much. As far as getting on YouTube, I'm just like, I just wear these t-shirts. And if I get more clothes that I feel like I'm more comfortable in, that maybe are a little more feminine, I might do that. I don't know. I mean, who knows? when I've had a couple of my personality collapses, unfortunately, I got rid of some clothes that would have been good for me to wear now, because if you know anything about personality collapses and not having a core identity, that can also play total havoc on your life. Borderlines go through that. Bipolar, you'll go through it. And I got rid of clothes one time just because I was going through a hypermasculine phase and they were not fitting me the way I wanted. Oh, they're too baggy. I would get frustrated. I've done that with other stuff too, gotten rid of stuff before out of frustration. Sometimes I was happy with what I got rid of, other times I've regretted it. I've learned from it. I've become more self-aware of these behaviors. You can do a lot of destructive behaviors when you have personality issues. But anyway, I'm just saying, I look back and some of those things, the baggy fits would have been good for a feminine look, but it is what it is, and I'm just where I'm at. And hopefully this gives you more understanding of me. If you've been watching this channel, then you understand what's going on with me more. And if you're going through something like this, then know that, well, there's a lot of people on here talking about this stuff, so you're never alone. And of course, any of you are always free to comment or talk to me on here about whatever. Just I would advise nobody to troll me or any of that, because I won't tolerate that. I'll just block you, or I'll report you. I'll report you and block you. Because, and as I said before, I don't need insecure people on here projecting their insecurities onto me because they don't like what I'm doing, or they want to say something about me because really there's something going on inside of them, that I'm reflecting back on them. So I'm just saying, you take that elsewhere. And this is a safe space for anybody who wants to talk to me about any of this kind of stuff. So anyway, with that, I appreciate you all watching, and I'm going to go for now. I'll talk to you all later on. Bye.